What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be discussing wide receiver rankings for the 2025 fantasy football season. In this video, I will go all the way from wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 100. So we will be going through 100 different wide receivers that I think will be fantasy relevant for you this season, and I will rank all of them in terms of how I think they will do this season, draft strategy that you can consider for your upcoming drafts either this weekend or next weekend, as well as other strategies that you can use with wide receivers to set yourself up for success and win your fantasy football league in 2025. If you're interested in more content like this, please subscribe to my channel. I make a wide variety of fantasy football content to include previews of all the positions. I also did divisional previews as well as mock drafts that you could check out from the most recent videos that I've made as well as other content that you could check out in the description below. So please subscribe to the channel and ask any question that you got. I reply to all my commenters, so please take advantage of that with this small channel and ask me any question that you can to help with your fantasy football team. Alright, so before we get into my rankings of the wide receivers from 1 to 100, I first want to discuss general strategy and my philosophy that I use for the wide receiver position, what I'm looking for with each of the wide receivers that I'm considering for my fantasy football team. In general, I just want to start off by saying that this video is geared towards full PPR formats. Most leagues in fantasy football now use a full PPR format. I will be doing a standard league specifically in a mock draft coming up later this upcoming week, so you can kind of see how things change a little bit. But in general, because this is geared towards PPR, I am generally trying to go for wide receivers that should get a high target volume share on their team. If they are getting a lot of receptions, it counts for a full point in this format, and that gives you a lot of points that simply is incredibly valuable when you have guys that are the number one wide receiver for their specific team. So when I am referring to wide receiver 1 in this video, I'm going to be talking about guys specifically that are the top wide receiver for their team. Wide receiver 2 would be the second option, etc. So a little bit of difference between who your fantasy wide receiver 1 would be versus what each individual team's wide receiver 1 is. That's the one that I'm going to be going with for this video and for the purposes of explaining all this. There's a general consensus in fantasy football that running backs are the most valuable position in fantasy football, and although I think that can be true to a degree, because running backs get injured so easily, I think that it is incredibly valuable to have locked-in wide receiver 1s who are going to give you a consistent floor of 15 to 20 points a game with upside to get even more depending on how many touchdowns, receptions, etc. that they get in a given game. So it's extremely valuable to have some of these receivers that will have high upside but also give you a good floor, and you get that mostly at the elite wide receivers versus some running backs give you that, but the purpose that I want to explain of wide receiver drafting is that you want to make sure that you have a lot of elite talent up at the top on your team, because I like to be in a position where I feel locked in with my wide receiver 1 and 2, don't feel like I have to move around guys at my wide receiver positions versus running backs, which is a little bit more matchup dependent, a little bit more volatile in terms of the injuries. But wide receivers, if you have a rock steady core of 2 to 3, even 4 guys that you can plug in to your wide receivers and flexes every week, it really gives you a nice advantage in fantasy football. So when I show you the rankings here, I have 20 different tiers set up for all 100 of the guys I'm going to be talking about in this video. And starting off at number 1 on this list for me is Jamar Chase. But before I get into Jamar Chase, I just want to give you a quick orientation to this graph. If you've seen my previous videos on the positional rankings, you'll see a pretty similar format here. But for those of you watching for the first time, far left column is my rank. That is how I individually rank them, followed by name, team, buy, pretty self-explanatory. Consensus rank is what the consensus fantasy football expert is ranking each of these wide receivers as. So I'm using a combination of ESPN, Sleeper, CBS Sports, NFL Network, Real-Time Fantasy Sports, and Fantrax to give a composite consensus rank, which is listed in the cons rank column. And then you have the overall rank, which is essentially looking at, where they project to go relative to all the other players. The average round then is where each of these players are expected to go if drafting in a 10-team league. So Jamar Chase at 1.1 is equivalent to the 101 and on down. ADP comparison, so what this is if you take all the wide receivers that were drafted in the original draft and then you reorder it into the ranking that I project them to actually do in fantasy football, it's a comparison of what type of value you're getting at certain points of the draft. So early on, you kind of see pretty similar numbers because they're all going in the first round. But a good example of this that I see later on that you can look at is Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin is generally going as the 18th receiver off the board. So he's going with, on average, the fourth pick in the fifth round. I project, though, that he's actually giving you first pick in the fourth round value. So because of that, the ADP comparison being a full point higher is why I have Terry McLaurin highlighted in green. You'll see an opposite effect of players highlighted in red, where if their average draft position is being taken much higher than they are projected to get drafted, the first you can see on this list is T. Higgins, compared to their ADP comparison of where I project they will actually perform. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at this Excel sheet on YouTube. And then you see each of the individual ranks as well for the fantasy football expert consensus from each of the column sources. So the purpose of this Excel is to basically show you where fantasy football users are drafting with wide receivers, my rank, and then the consensus fantasy football expert rank to kind of put it all together. So that being said, I will start with my first tier, which is the 101 tier, and that is Jamar Chase. I've talked about this in a couple videos already, so you can check out those in my previous videos on the channel, but Jamar Chase is pretty clearly the 101 to me. One, you have elite rapport with Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase is not only the best receiver talent in the league, except for maybe Justin Jefferson, but the thing that separates him from Justin Jefferson is the fact that he already has rapport with Joe Burrow even through college. He's locked in as a wide receiver one. It also helps that Cincinnati's defense is terrible, so because of that, they're going to need to rely on Chase frequently throughout the season. And on top of that, he has that continuity with Joe Burrow on top of that, which a lot of these guys later in the list, there's some variables changing from this season to last season. Cincinnati is pretty much running exactly what they had back in 2024. So because of that, Jamar Chase is pretty clearly the 101 to me. And if you go back to my running back video that I made a week ago, you'll see that I have Jamar Chase number 1, and then I go Saquon, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, and then the next wide receiver, which would be Justin Jefferson. So this tier delineation is kind of to help you see. I try to break these tiers up into groups that you can hopefully compare with the running backs and use that to help you in the drafts that you have coming up over the next week and a half before week 1. So my second tier is the elitist wide receiver 1. My third tier is the elite wide receiver ones. So Justin Jefferson is the most elite of the wide receiver ones, but not the 101 like Jamar Chase. Justin Jefferson in a tier of his own as well, like Jamar. Like I said earlier, the only thing that is really the knock on Justin Jefferson, because you could argue till you're blue in the face of whether Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson is actually a better receiver than each other. In terms of fantasy, though, there's a lot of question marks with Minnesota of what exactly J.J. McCarthy will look like. This is his first season playing. As a result, there's a little more uncertainty with Justin Jefferson. I'm not worried about him not being productive in fantasy, but I don't feel as confident that he will do as well as Jamar Chase, because Chase has, just on paper, some of the best variables that you can have for fantasy football, on top of the fact that he's already very good as it is. And the thing with Justin Jefferson, though, is that you don't really know exactly how the quarterback play is going to be. That's why he falls a little bit lower to me than Jamar Chase, but he's still better than all the other options. You can make some argument with CeeDee Lamb maybe, but I think Justin Jefferson still deserves to be in a tier of his own, because for me personally, I would just rather have him than any of the wide receivers coming up next. And I think that if the quarterback play is great in Minnesota, then Justin Jefferson has a real shot of challenging Jamar Chase for number 1 overall among the wide receiver position at the end of the season. The next tier are the elite wide receiver ones. This is a tier of 6 players. Number 3, CeeDee Lamb. Number 4, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Number 5, Malik Nabers. Number 6, Nico Collins. Number 7, Puka Nacua. And number 8, Brian Thomas Jr. So I have these receivers all arranged in terms of essentially how good I think their quarterback play is going to be, as well as the variety of other targets that may go to some other wide receivers as well. So the biggest hit in this list to me among the guys that are in this tier is Puka Nacua, because we don't really know exactly what the health of Matt Stafford is. It's good that he's practicing again, but is he going to be ready to go for week 1 with a herniated disc, which is, especially for a guy his age, is a pretty big red flag. Then you drop off to Jimmy Garoppolo after that. So because of that, Puka falls a little bit to me, but he doesn't really fall out of this tier. I've personally not really found myself drafting him, though, because of the concerns with Los Angeles. But we'll go back to the top here. CeeDee Lamb, to me, is at the top of this list because the biggest knock on him last season was that he is a great wide receiver talent, but he didn't have anything around him, and defenses were able to just hone in on him. Now that Dallas has George Pickens, I think that will actually help CeeDee Lamb a lot to just free him up a little bit. Dak Prescott regains full health. I think that they're going to, again, they're not expected to be a great team in my opinion, so I think they will be passing a lot, trying to come from behind. So because of that, I think CeeDee Lamb is going to be heavily involved, locked in as a very good wide receiver that you should be taking in the first round. I have him just after the Justin Jefferson tier for me. So there's a little bit of an argument of whether or not you take CMC or CeeDee Lamb. I would prefer Lamb, but CMC and Derrick Henry would fall somewhere in the middle of this tier of these guys. It really depends on what exactly you're looking for on your team, but I think that CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown, number 4, are the guys that I would place over CMC and Derrick Henry. Would probably take them before Malik Nabers. Amon-Ra St. Brown, real quick, very consistent wide receiver that is almost about as a sure thing as you can get with his consistency. The one thing you worry about is the drop-off from Ben Johnson to the new OC. I'm personally not too concerned for fantasy purposes, but doesn't give me the upside of the 3 guys ahead of him. Malik Nabers, the quarterback play is definitely a concern, but you look at the rest of this team and there's not a whole lot of other options that they have. So I think he will be heavily targeted, and in full PPR especially, is a top 5 wide receiver to me. Nico Collins, I have him a little bit lower than Malik Nabers for kind of what I just described. I think Nico Collins may be a little bit more of a victim of some targets to other guys, as well as an effective run game. New York literally is going to go completely through Malik Nabers on that offense. So because of that, I have Nico Collins slightly below Nabers. But again, both are good options to have in fantasy. Puka falls below those guys. If we know Matt Stafford is fully healthy, I would probably put Puka Nacua at number 5 on my list, below Amon-Ra St. Brown. But we don't really know right now, and that situation looks murky. Brian Thomas Jr., one of the rookie sleepers from last season who went very late and became an excellent asset for fantasy. I'm a little concerned about the presence of Travis Hunter in terms of just how hyper-targeted he will be, as well as Trevor Lawrence's quarterback play. But I do think that Liam Cohen is going to set this offense up to be successful. And if you can get Brian Thomas around the 1-2 turn, that's a pretty good investment to make. He's a receiver that might slip because he's not super well known, and there are some concerns with what I just described. But he should be heavily involved, should be heavily targeted, and I think he's a great wide receiver to have for fantasy. The next tier for me are the great value great value wide receivers. So you may have noticed that I had a great value running back tier as well, and those guys and these guys are all in that same tier of guys that I like. So Drake London to me is on the top of this list. He is going in general in the second round, and as I've already talked about in my mock draft videos, he's very much in a situation where this team has not a lot else reliable to throw to besides Drake London. He was the top 5 wide receiver last season. Darnell Mooney is injured, doesn't look like he's going to play to begin the season. Kyle Pitts has not been consistent throughout his career. I think Drake London is about as good of a second-round pick as you could take, in my personal opinion. He's the guy that I've been heavily targeting in the second round in fantasy football drafts. A.J. Brown falls a little bit below Drake London because he is nursing a hamstring injury, but A.J. Brown, again, has top 5 wide receiver upside, too, when he's healthy. And I think that I personally feel that the injury is not going to limit him from the fact that he is the best wide receiver that this team has. I think that the Eagles are playing it safe just to make sure that he's healthy and good to go. But when A.J. Brown is healthy and is locked in, that he is the clear number 1 option for Jalen Hurts in that offense in the passing game. So I like A.J. Brown, and he's slipping quite a bit because of his injury concerns, but I think that he gives you an upside that everybody after him simply does not have. Next is JSN. I really like JSN a lot. Jackson Smith and Jigba. To me, this is again another guy that was a top 10 wide receiver last year, but going in general in the 3rd round in fantasy drafts, I think he gives you incredible upside because arguably you could say they improved going from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold. I know that's not really the popular opinion right now, but JSN is an ascending talent, former first-round wide receiver. This team does not really have a lot of locked-in consistent targets after him. Last year they had DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And I know Cooper Kupp, Torrey Horton, MVS, etc. They're not bad. They are kind of upgrades, but it's a little bit more of a lateral move to me. And I think JSN, with the consistency and continuity in this offense, as well as what should be improved quarterback play, in my opinion, I think that he is going at a great value in fantasy football drafts. I would be definitely trying to lock him up, and he's a top 12 wide receiver to me. And then Garrett Wilson, kind of the same theme as you see with these other guys I've talked about. He is a wide receiver 1 on a team that does not have a lot of other guys around him, especially now that Devontae Adams is gone. You kind of worry with Justin Fields' accuracy a little bit, which is why he kind of falls below these other guys to me. But he's in this tier because he should be, again, heavily targeted, heavily involved. I think this offense will be, and this team in general, will be better than it was in 2024. I like Garrett Wilson a lot. Remember, Garrett Wilson was actually flirting in the top 5 of wide receiver rankings before Devontae Adams was added to the team and before their season really went down the drain. And then rounding out this tier to me at number 13 is Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, to me, the contract situation is almost a blessing in disguise in terms of his fantasy ADP because it's allowed him to fall into what is on consensus the 5th round in fantasy drafts. But this is, again, a guy that top 10 wide receiver last season with Jaden Daniels. And you look at the rest of the guys on this team after him, there's not really a ton of concerning guys there, at least talent-wise. I know Deebo Samuel is interesting, but he's not at the level of Terry McLaurin. Zach Ertz up also there. Terry McLaurin is clearly the best wide receiver this team has. And once he gets, I personally believe the contract is going to get done before week 1. Maybe a little bit of a slow start to the season, but I think Terry McLaurin going in the 5th round on average, he's really giving you 4th round value. This is a great pickup that I am targeting in my 2nd to 3rd round. So all these guys in this great value tier, my 4th tier, are all players that I really like going in the 2nd to 3rd round range. The next tier, tier number 5, high risk, high reward. Number 14, Marvin Harrison. 15, T. Higgins. 16, Tyreek Hill. These are guys that have potential to be top 10 wide receivers, but they also have a lot of concerns that make me a little bit hesitant, but still, because of the reward and upside that you could get with them, I think they're good picks to take a shot on, rounding out my top 16 on this list. MHJ we were a little bit critical of his rookie season, but it actually was not that bad by rookie standards. I think Kyler Murray and his quarterback play is a question mark here. If Harrison Jr. is actually the wide receiver 1 or if the top receiving option is really Trey McBride, things like that. But he's so talented, and I think he is poised for a second-year leap that really could surprise a lot of people. T. Higgins, I have him highlighted red, not because I don't think he's going to be a good wide receiver, but we've seen historically from him, he's not really been the most consistent for fantasy. He gets hurt a lot. He does have up and down performances. He gives you the highest of highs when he goes off, but he has a lot of games where he's giving you sub 10 points in a full PPR format, which could really hurt you if you're relying him as your first wide receiver. T. Higgins to me is somebody that I would feel comfortable with as my wide receiver too, though. But because there is a wide volatility of outcomes with him, he is a little bit of poor value to me in terms of I think he's actually giving you mid to late fourth round value when he's going on average in the late third. Next on this list, Tyreek Hill. So a lot of question marks here. We don't know exactly what this Dolphins team is going to look like, but he's just 2 years removed from being the number one overall wide receiver in fantasy. And because of that, I think that he has to be on this list for somebody that is intriguing to me. He's one of the fastest players in the NFL. The team is a bit of a mess, but if Mike McDaniel can figure out a way to get him back involved in the passing game and recreate some of the magic they had 2 years ago, this could be a league-winning pick potentially in the range that he's going in drafts. The next tier to be at number 6 are concerning early round options. There are 3 players here, number 17, Ladd McConkey, 18, Davante Adams, and 19, Mike Evans. All 3 of these guys, to me, are good wide receivers, but they're going a little bit too high to where I would like them. Ladd McConkey, because he's a little bit of a... He benefited last year from an absence of a lot of receivers. This year they're bringing in Trey Harris. They also brought in Amari and Hampton as a running back. They have Keenan Allen coming in. He's getting an extra year of tape. I think what I fear as the worst possible outcome is a Hunter Renfrow type thing. I don't foresee something being that dramatic for him, but I do worry that he's not going to replicate the value where he's on average going in the mid-third round. I've generally been avoiding him, but I think if he does slip into the 5th round, I'd feel a little more comfortable with that. Not a bad receiver, but I don't love him in terms of I don't really see another ceiling of what we've seen from his rookie year of what he could be. Davante Adams, kind of the opposite in terms of he's a little bit on the decline. Same with Mike Evans to a degree. The concern with Davante Adams is just the quarterback situation in Los Angeles, I've already mentioned. That'll really hurt him if he's one with Jimmy Garoppolo again, which was not great in Las Vegas, by the way. But he would be the second option with a decreased quarterback performance and threshold there. So that's concerning. And then Mike Evans, they're bringing in Emeka Egbuka. They have a lot of mouths to feed in that offense, and they lost Liam Cohen. All of that is a little bit concerning to me for him to go that high. He's not a bad option if he falls around, but still, the guys above him are above him for a reason, in my opinion. The next group of guys, we're starting to get now into the 5th to 7th round, and these are great options to me. This tier is called the underrated target machines, tier number 7, and it goes in this order. Number 20, Courtland Sutton. Number 21, DK Metcalf. Number 22, Zay Flowers. Number 23, Tedero McMillan. Number 24, Calvin Ridley. All 5 of these receivers are going pretty late in drafts, but they should be locked in as top wide receivers on their team. They are the clear wide receiver ones in these offenses, and as a result, I suspect they will be heavily targeted and could creep up into top 12 value as the season progresses, depending on how their quarterback play is. Because of some of the unknowns of the quarterback play, they're not as high as some of the other guys on this list, but I think could really be great rocks for you in fantasy. And if you go back to my mock videos, you see that I've been taking these guys frequently in the 5th to 7th round range because I think in full PPR formats, they will be extremely valuable. Courtland Sutton is the highest on this list to me because I think Bo Nix could be poised for a breakout this season. He is looking good so far in training camp. And he had good rapport with Sutton last year. Sutton was a top 12 wide receiver in the second half of the year last year. DK Metcalf, same thing. He is locked in as the top option in Pittsburgh. Zay Flowers, a little bit like pseudo wide receiver 1 because Mark Andrews is there, but he has Lamar Jackson, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Tedero McMillan should be highly targeted by Bryce Young. They need a wide receiver 1. They didn't really have any clear options step up last season, aside from the 36-year-old Adam Thielen. You see a common trend here. Calvin Ridley, I've talked about a lot as a guy that I really like because I see him having a similar breakout to what we saw with Terry McLaurin, where you bring in a rookie quarterback and a guy that had been struggling the previous season in fantasy and gets drafted late has an extreme rise in value. I see that being 100% the case with Calvin Ridley. But really, any of these five, I think, are guys that I would definitely be trying to target in the middle to late rounds of your draft. They are all excellent options for me. So before we continue with the next group of tiers, I just want to give a quick promotion of my channel. So if you have been watching this video, thank you so much. I appreciate all my supporters and commenters that watch my videos. I do want to make a few announcements that I have made a Fantasy Football 201 Instagram page. So I have the QR code here. You can check that out. The way I foresee this season going, there's going to be a lot of news. I will not be able to make reaction videos as everything pops up because there's going to be a lot of frequent news throughout the day that it'll be frankly hard to summarize all that in videos. So what I intend to do is give my quick thoughts on fantasy football content in YouTube posts as well as Instagram posts. So you can check out my Instagram page. Please join that group. Check out my YouTube post of my quick thoughts on moves that happen on the margins in fantasy as well. You'll see some of my comments on the Brian Robinson Jr. trade as well as some other ones that come up. Also on my channel, I make guitar covers. I play guitar, for those of you who don't know. I sing songs. I have been a singer in church, actually, playing Christian music. So I have covers of that on my channel, and I'd like to get back to doing that. I'm still not sure at this time if I'm going to have that on this channel or make a separate channel for that. So, but I do encourage you to check out those videos and let me know if you think they would be better on their own channel or part of this channel. So yeah, just let me know, and thank you for watching this video once again. All right, we will go to our next tier. We have the next group of guys coming up here. These are the high upside wide receiver twos. And when I mean wide receiver twos, I'm talking about wide receiver twos on their specific team. They are number 25, Jameson Williams, number 26, Xavier Worthy, number 27, Travis Hunter, number 28, George Pickens, number 29, Devonta Smith, and number 30, Rome Odunze. All of these guys are relatively young players on their respective teams, and they have intriguing upside to me because of the potential of what the offense could be. But I don't like them as much as the guys ahead of them because they are just simply not the top option for that team. As a result, you may have some more volatility where some of these guys may not be too involved. Let's say you're playing a game late in the season in the snow. You are trying to get the run game going. You're not able to get the ball through the air very well. These are the guys that may see some big hits in their performances from week to week given the game script, because just simply they're the second option on their team. So as a result, I'm not as high on these six players here because I think you may see some extreme of outcomes. They'll have some games where they go off, Jameson Williams especially, but there may be some other games where he does not do anything. The real wild card to me here is Travis Hunter, as well as Rome Odunze I want to mention as well. Travis Hunter, I think this could go one of two ways. He could either be, an elite talent that breaks in as a top 20, 15 wide receiver in this league, up there with Brian Thomas Jr., or because he's splitting time on offense and defense, he's not heavily involved and he's very frustrating for fantasy. I think his range of which he's getting drafted in the 7th round on average, late 7th, is not bad to take a chance either way. It's not too much of a risk, but it has a lot of variety of directions it could go. And then Rome Odunze, I think you could make a real argument that he could actually be the wide receiver 1 on the Bears. I will talk about the Bears a little bit more as we get to one of their other wide receivers later, but I don't really like this offense for fantasy because I foresee the targets will be dispersed heavily between a lot of different guys, and you may see some up and down performances from all the different mouths that they have to feed in that offensive system. The next group of guys, there are 2 players here that are pending suspensions, and these are the high upside suspensions in this tier. This is Rashee Rice and Jordan Addison. And purple is a unique category that I want to talk about in terms of looking for guys to stash primarily. understanding they may not have great value right away, but they could be great for you as the season progresses. Rashee Rice, to me, I have him a little bit lower than his average ADP because he's facing a suspension that could be as great as 6 to 8 games, which is, if you don't know, is about half the season. I think because of that, I wouldn't feel comfortable taking a 6th-round pick on a guy like that. But there is an argument to be made he could be the wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs when he gets back. Jordan Addison, same thing. He's only missing 3 games. I think that is the much better value personally in terms of guys that are suspended to take a chance on. I think Rashee Rice will have a little bit better of a season, but Addison, especially if McCarthy is really good, that could be great value for you too, that you're on average getting as the 40th wide receiver off the board in most leagues. Number 10 in my tiers is an early wide receiver that I am out on, and that is DJ Moore. DJ Moore to me as a 5th-round pick is not interesting to me at all. I have been avoiding him pretty much everywhere because, as I said with this Bears team, we just don't know what the breakdown is going to be with these options. They bring in Luther Burden. They're going to get him involved. Colston Loveland, tight end, they're going to get him involved. They still have Cole Kmet there. They have the running backs. You have just a lot of question marks with the Bears. And I think that although this could be a great offense for fantasy, I would not want to take a chance on DJ Moore going in the 5th round to see if that works out, because I'm assuming at that point that's going to be your 2nd wide receiver, and it could either go the route of DJ Moore getting phased out. It could be great value, but it's just way too risky for me. From what we've seen at camp, they like Luther Burden and Rome Odunze more. I just feel that DJ Moore is not good value where he's getting drafted, and he is number 33 on my list despite being the 20th by consensus. The next tier, number 11, are the underrated mid-round wide receiver 1s. So these are all guys that I think should be wide receiver 1s on their team based on the development that we've seen this season. We have number 34, Jerry Jeudy, number 35, Stephon Diggs, 36, Jacoby Myers, 37, Ricky Pearsall, and 38, Deebo Samuel Sr. So Deebo is in this group as a contingency on the Terry McLaurin contract. Because Deebo, to me, while Terry McLaurin is unsigned, he's been getting the reps and the rapport with Jaden Daniels in the offseason, and I think that does give him some value there. All these guys, on average, are going in the 8th to 9th round, which I think if you're looking for, again, another even, I guess, a good value versus a great value among those guys I've kind of talked about earlier, you're getting guys that should be heavily targeted in offenses where there should be the wide receiver 1, but at a much later cost in the draft. So these are all wide receivers that if I'm in the 8th, 9th round, I'm targeting one of these guys as well. I think Jerry Jeudy with Flacco is probably the biggest riser of this group. Stephon Diggs, you obviously have the injury that he's nursing, and because of that, he may not be good to go right away. But if he starts the season on IR or if he's injured, this is a guy that should definitely be stashed in your IR spot and could be a starter by the end of the season. The New England options are not great after him. Jacoby Myers is probably really the 2nd option after Brock Bowers, but still a very underrated wide receiver 1. Ricky Pearsall is emerging as the top option in San Francisco while they're dealing with a lot of injuries and holdouts and all that stuff. And Deebo Samuel I already talked about. So all these guys, very intriguing value that you can get very late. I would definitely be targeting one of these 5. The next 3 are guys that I am not targeting. I'll just put it at that. These are the low-risk, volatile reward receivers. So I say that because, they're low-risk, volatile reward for me because, to me, all of 3 of these guys, especially in the case of Jalen Waddle, I want to say, this guy gets so much hype year to year. And the bottom line, as I've mentioned, is that he is the 2nd wide receiver in Miami. And Miami is not as good of an offense as they've been in years past. I do not see a situation where Jalen Waddle is going to be supplanting Tyreek Hill as a top option. In fact, we've already seen in recent years that they've preferred other guys such as Jonnu Smith as, the 2nd option over Jalen Waddle. He goes way too high because of where he was drafted in 2021. And because of that, he falls quite a bit. Chris Olave to me at number 39, just ahead of Jalen Waddle at 40. Olave is just injured so much that I don't really take him seriously. I I think hypothetically, he is the number one wide receiver on New Orleans, and that's worth something. But because of the frequent injuries we've seen with him, he is not in that tier of guys like Debo, Jacoby Myers, Steph Diggs for me, because I just personally don't have as much faith that he's going to last the whole season. He's got Tyler Shuck as his quarterback, which may honestly be the worst quarterback in the league, potentially. Cooper Kupp, I don't hate Cooper Kupp, but I see his role being very redundant to JSN as a slot PPR machine type of guy. I think that because of that, you may see limited opportunity for Cooper Kupp, and you're actually going to see a little bit more of Torrey Horton, for example, or even MVS, as much as I don't want to admit that. So because of that, Cooper Kupp is not a bad option, and his ADP is low, but I'm personally not really targeting him. The next group of guys are low risk and high reward players. These are deep league upside type of guys here. Starting at number 42, Keon Coleman. Number 43, Khalil Shakir. Number 44, Josh Downs. Number 45, Emeka Ibuka. Number 46, Matthew Golden. Number 47, Luther Burden. 48, Jaden Higgins. 49, Keenan Allen, believe it or not. And number 50, Trey Harris. So all of these guys are players that are generally going at the end of drafts or undrafted. And I think all of them have very intriguing upside. I have the two Buffalo wide receivers at the top because just Josh Allen can elevate either of these guys. I would personally feel better about the upside of Coleman if I'm comparing him to Shakir, but Khalil Shakir is very safe and going at a very nice ADP that you could get potentially starting level value for. Josh Downs, especially with Daniel Jones there now, I think should benefit quite a bit. He's really, to me, the number one wide receiver on this team, and very good for PPR as well. Emeka Ibuka is the hot rookie, and I think that he is somebody that is kind of being slept on. I don't love him to have a great season necessarily, but I do think he has intriguing value. But much like we talked about with Odunze and the Bears, the concerning thing to me with this team is that there's just so many mouths to feed in that offense. I don't know if there's just simply going to be enough room for Ibuka to really break out and beat all of them, personally. But I think he is better valued for his ADP in comparison to Mike Evans if you have to compare the two Bucs receivers. Matthew Golden is going a little bit too high from where I like, and this Green Bay receiving core is another one of those messes where there's just multiple different mouths to feed and nobody has stepped up as another number one. But I do feel best if any of them could step up, it would be Matthew Golden. But I don't love him as a 10th round pick, more of 11th round value personally. Luther Burden, this is a real wild card here. I think it's a good shot to take at the last round or two. Same with guys like Jaden Higgins. Those are two rookies that I think could step up into a wide receiver 2 void and not really costing you too much. Keenan Allen, to me, is a sleeper that, he's not a young guy like most of the players on this list, but because he has that previous rapport with Justin Herbert, and he actually was okay last season despite what the general consensus on him is right now, that he's washed or whatever. I think he will, going back to Los Angeles, playing with a better organization with Jim Harbaugh versus Brandon Staley. I think that Keenan Allen should be pretty productive right away. I like him as somebody that you can take in the last round of a lot of drafts. Trey Harris, that's the other name you can keep an eye on too in Los Angeles. Same receiving core room as somebody that could step up there as well. Both of them are good low-risk upside picks that you could take there. The next group of guys are low-risk but volatile upside. So these four receivers to me are getting drafted a little bit too high from what I'm comfortable for. And if I say a little, I mean that sarcastically. I am not super big on any of these four receivers, and that is because they're going in a range where I would just rather take a chance on some guys that we have not seen yet, and maybe they could be a little bit more productive. Number 51, Chris Godwin, dealing with injuries. Like him as a player, but just, again, so many mouths to feed. I feel better about Ibuka personally. 52, Jawan Jennings, great last season, but holdout plus calf injury, which we don't really know is a calf injury or a way of him holding out. But I don't feel great about him there since he hasn't practiced all offseason, and he's also injured currently. Don't love him at his ADP. Michael Pittman Jr., I think, as I said earlier, I think Josh Downs is the one that I would be trying to get on the Colts. Pittman we've seen before in a lot of ways, and I think his role as a possession wide receiver is a little bit redundant now to Tyler Warren, who should be pretty involved in that offense. I think Pittman will be too volatile for me to want to take a look at. And then Jaden Reed, he fell quite a bit compared to his ADP last season, but we've seen so much variety in his outcomes that I would just personally want to avoid him. He could go off for a game, but if I had Jaden Reed in that situation, I would just be trying to sell him for better value personally. And that's kind of the case with all four of these guys. If I have them, it would be for the intent of flipping them in a trade later on. The next group of guys we have are the deep league upside players. This is starting with number 55, Rashid Shaheed, number 56, Rashad Bateman, 57, Marvin Mims Jr., 58, Cedric Tillman, 59, Wan'Dale Robinson, number 60, Demario Douglas, number 61, Joshua Palmer, and number 62, Adam Thielen. All of these wide receivers to me are guys that you can get pretty much undrafted. In shallow leagues and in deep leagues are being taken at the end. But they are all guys that could have sneaky value because they're either in a situation where their team needs a wide receiver too, and they have shown flashes at times, or they have talent and there's potential that they could step up into that. So but the case of all these guys, their ADP is so low, it's worth taking a shot on them as a stream or just a stash to see what happens at the beginning of the season. But I wouldn't really be too tied to them necessarily. I think all of them are good options, though, because like I said, there's an argument that could be made that they all could be wide receiver twos on their team. And in a full PPR league, that has a lot of value in and of itself. The next group of guys are the intriguing rookies. So these are rookies that are generally going undrafted, but if you're in a deep league, I would be holding one of these guys on my bench and seeing what happens, because I think there's a chance that all of them could be productive later in the season. Keep in mind, Brian Thomas Jr. as an elite rookie last year was generally going at the end of rounds, if not undrafted. So these are all guys that, I'm not saying one of these guys is going to be the next Brian Thomas Jr., but I'm saying that there is a world where they could be very good fantasy players. Number 63, Torrey Horton. That is the guy that I think has the highest likelihood of becoming a, high-level fantasy asset for me personally, because there's a real argument he could be the wide receiver 2 in Seattle. Number 64, Kyle Williams of New England. 65, Pat Bryant. 66, Alec Aomanor. 67, Jalen Noel. 68, Dante Thornton Jr. 69, Jack Besh. And number 70, Isaac Tesla. All these guys, I'm interested in their situations and seeing how they develop. I see that there's a possibility that they could have great games and they'll be fantasy relevant. I could even see one of them becoming, like I said, a sleeper or a waiver wire darling, for lack of better words, where they go off week 1 and they become super popular to pick up on waivers, spend your fab, etc. I think I need to see a good sample size. Another example I do want to bring up is Puka Nacua, who was kind of in a similar tier, as you would say, from this type of group 2 years ago. But these are all guys that in those deep leagues, if you're looking at the guys like Rashid Shaheed, the tier above, those guys will probably have better seasons. But if you're going for winning your fantasy football league, these are the group of rookies here in this intriguing rookie tier that you want to stash because of the potential upside that it could bring you. The next group of guys, rounding out the top 75, number 71, Adonai Mitchell, number 72, Xavier Legette, number 73, Roman Wilson, number 74, Devon Vele, riser here, and number 75, Troy Franklin. These are the intriguing sophomores. So these are all second-year wide receivers. A lot of times in the NFL, it takes 2 years for these guys to really break out, and these are guys that I think are not really on people's fantasy radars, but could have a relative breakout this season. Adonai Mitchell has looked good in the Colts camp. I think there's a real world where he could be the wide receiver 2 there. Xavier Legette, very physically talented, also very raw. And then you have Roman Wilson with Pittsburgh. They need a second wide receiver, and he's got Aaron Rodgers there, experienced guy who should be able to get him involved. Devon Vele is the biggest riser of this group. I love him going to New Orleans because they don't really have any, just young wide receivers with a lot of upside. I guess you could count Olave, but for me personally, he's been injured so much, it's a little hard for me to view him as a definite guy that could be part of their future long term. I think, though, with Valet, I know he's an older rookie, but still, if he could be productive right away, that could be a good foundation for that team to build on, especially with Tyler Shuck, who's also another older rookie. And then Troy Franklin, when Valet leaves, there needs to be somebody that steps up there. I personally think it's a better chance to be Marvin Mims, but Troy Franklin played with Bo Nix in college, so this is a guy that I wouldn't be surprised shooting up and having a much better fantasy season in 2025 as well. Next, we will be rounding out our bottom 75 on this list. We are going now to a more of a negative topic of conversation. These are the late round wide receivers that I'm out on in tier number 17. It is number 76, Darnell Mooney. Number 77, Christian Kirk. Number 78, Brandon Ayuk, who is actually the number 51 wide receiver in consensus, crazy enough. Number 79, Marquise Brown. Number 88, Romeo Doubs. So the theme with all these guys is that they're either injured or I've seen enough of them that I don't foresee them having a productive fantasy season, or at least a reliable one at minimum. Darnell Mooney is injured. I like him as a player, and I like what he did last season, but he's looking like he's not going to play for the first month of the season. Christian Kirk, we've seen that show for many years, and I would rather take a chance on these Houston rookies than Christian Kirk as the second wide receiver there personally. Brandon Ayuk, one, he's coming off a major knee injury, then two, he's also got a potential suspension. So I don't actually, I'm sorry, I mixed up the suspension with what's going on with Rashee Rice. I apologize for that. But Brandon Ayuk has got a major knee injury going on. They're saying that he is not going to play they're hoping to get him back by week 6. Why would you be taking somebody in the top 50 of your wide receiver room in fantasy football if he's not going to play for maybe the first half of the season, best case scenario? I'm out on him personally. Marquise Brown, the Chiefs wide receivers in general are just a mess for fantasy. Unless you have Worthy or Rice, the rest of it is just punting for me. And then Romeo Doubs, same thing with Green Bay. He's getting phased out by the rookies and Jaden Reed, among others there. The next group of guys, though, these are the undrafted streamers that I think could be relevant and have some good value. Number 81, Michael Wilson. Number 82, DeAndre Hopkins. 83, Tyler Lockett. 84, Alec Pierce. 85, Quentin Johnston. 86, Ray-Ray McCloud. 87, Mac Hollins. 88, Calvin Austin III. So all of these are veteran wide receivers for the most part, or at least veteran by at least 3 years in the league. They are players that are going undrafted but should be good streaming options. I like Michael Wilson the most because I think there's a real argument that he could be the second wide receiver in Arizona. DeAndre Hopkins, don't love him, but he's going to a great offense. Tyler Lockett should get some opportunity in Tennessee. Alec Pierce, if nothing else, is a great DFS play. He'll find ways to be relevant from time to time with his ex-wide receiver skills and long touchdowns. Quentin Johnston, same thing, but B-grade version of that. Ray-Ray McCloud, they need a second wide receiver in Atlanta. Could be him. Mac Hollins, need a second wide receiver in New England. Could be him. And Calvin Austin, need a second wide receiver in Pittsburgh. Could be him. I'd rather take a chance on the rookies than these guys, but they do have streaming appeal. The next tier of guys are the situations to monitor. So there are guys that are right on the edge of my board. They could go up. They could go down. I'm keeping an eye on these players, though, because they have some developments that could swing this either way for them. Number 89, Jalen Royals. Number 90, Nick Westbrook-Akine. Number 91, Demarcus Robinson. 92, Noah Brown. 93, Sky Moore. 94, De'Ami Brown. 95, Efton Chisholm III, preseason breakout. 96, Keandre Lambert-Smith, another preseason breakout. All of these guys are in situations where they could be involved on that team, and because of that, I think there's a chance that they could be relevant in fantasy for different reasons for all of them. So I say that in that these are all guys that I'm monitoring their names, seeing what happens, keeping an eye on what's going on in those wide receiver rooms, because there's uncertainty in exactly what their role could be. Like, for example, Efton Chisholm Jr., there's a world where he's just better than all the rookies they drafted over him and could be, there could be a world where he's the number one option there if Stephon Diggs is not ready to go week 1. I know that sounds crazy, but there's a void that needs to be filled on that team. And you can kind of make similar cases with all these other names. Sky Moore just traded to the 49ers. Their wide receiver room has a lot of injuries right now. So because of that, I think there's a lot of interest in these guys, but I don't really love them as anything more than just monitoring their names while they're on waivers. And then the next four, in the deepest of leagues, these are the hypothetical stashes. And these are four players that, to me, I think have value to stash. I don't really expect them to come back this season and play, but I think they have value just simply because they're names that could be traded for better value. Number 97, Tank Dell. 98, Hunter Renfrow, aforementioned earlier in the video. 99, Amari Cooper. And 100, Odell Beckham Jr. So Tank Dell, coming back from a major injury, I don't think he will play, but I think there will be some news throughout the season that, like, oh, he's looking better, camp. That could be a good chance that if you have him in Dynasty, flip him. Or you could hold him. I think it's somebody to hold, and if he, for whatever reason, does get better by December, he's a name that could really make a difference on that team because they, if he's back and healthy, he's the second best wide receiver if he gets back to his old self. Hunter Renfrow, I bring him up. As I mentioned earlier, it was kind of crazy like how far he's fallen throughout the last 4 years. This was a Pro Bowl rookie when he was playing with Derek Carr in Las Vegas. Feels like forever ago. But now he's getting a second chance at Carolina. Maybe playing closer to where his roots were in Clemson, like he can get things figured out. But this is still a young receiver that has potential in the league. He's about the same age as Trevor Lawrence. So because of that, I think there's a real world where Hunter Renfrow could be relevant again in fantasy. But I think more than likely he's a name that you could use that people might remember in a trade. And then Amari Cooper and Odell Beckham Jr. are currently unsigned. I think they will be signed, though, before the end of the season in some capacity, whether that be to an active roster or a practice squad. They hold value because of their names that have been in fantasy football for a long time in trades. So they make the end of this list for me as guys that are relevant as my 99th and 100th wide receivers. So if you stayed with me through all of this, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope this helps you with your fantasy drafts and your selection of wide receivers to get ready for your drafts either this weekend, later this week, or over Labor Day weekend. As always, if you have any questions, please comment below. I reply to all my commenters. And thank you for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.